Let's go up to Queensland now and catch up with James Allan, who's an academic and a lawyer and a mathematician, I read, James, but you write and talk a lot of sense. And as someone who has come to this country from afar, you must be staggered that we're supposed to be this anti-authoritarian, sort of self-reliant, she'll be right sort of a country, but now we're just welcoming an endless array of laws and restrictions.
Well, thank you, Chris. You sound like my mum. But it is staggering. I just can't believe it. If you look around the world, you've got almost, 30 to 100,000 Germans protesting against the lockdowns. You've got 20 to 25,000 in Trafalgar Square. And here people just, incredibly seem quite happy, even though the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Lockdowns don't work. Last year, I think it was 800 people died of the flu. A couple 100,000 caught it. Nobody's panicking over that. The CDC in the U.S. just came out yesterday with the statistic that 6% of all the deaths were people without at least 2 comorbidities. Obviously, it's a serious virus, but the original goal was to flatten the curve, and it's transmogrified itself. The politicians have allowed it to get out of hand, and it has now become a sort of implicit eradication. Won't work. Sweden has done this better than anyone. Sweden is now back to 500 people can gather. There are no restrictions on anything. Their economy has done better than anywhere in Europe. It's contracted by 4%. Britain's is 20%. I don't actually believe the figures here in Australia. Get rid of job seeker and job keeper. It's not 7%. It's a lot more than that.
See, my point about this too is that even when you compare death tolls between countries now, that's not really a realistic assessment, because we're going to be dealing with this for years. So we can go through all this trauma, all these lockdowns, all these curfews, spend an absolute fortune, yet we're still going to have to open up with the virus amongst us anyway.
Well, the chief epidemiologist in Sweden, who is much more credentialed than any of these chief medical officers, who to me don't seem to be particularly well credentialed, he said all along that if you go for lockdown, you can never come out unless you bet the house on a vaccine. And so as soon as you loosen the lockdown, it's going to come back. Sweden has done the hard work. They have had 6,000 deaths, which equates to 99.95% of the population have not died. And if you want that for people under 60, it's 99.998. It's been a complete overreaction. One of the places where I think I'm slightly different than you, Chris, is, you want to put a lot of blame on the premiers for the borders. I totally agree with that. But the Prime Minister has the worst border in the world. He won't let Australians leave the country. It's like North Korea. There is no excuse for that. People who come back in have to quarantine. Canada doesn't do that.
I agree with you. Anyone wants to come into this country, or anyone leave and come back, should be fine as long as we're prepared to quarantine for 2 weeks. Just finally, because we are almost out of time, James, you and Rebecca Weiser have been writing brilliantly on this stuff in the Specky under Rowan Dean. But you've suggested we need a new political party, the anti-lockdown party.
Well, it's hard not to become totally disillusioned with the Liberal Party. They have no concern for the freedom of the individual. It was a left-leaning social democratic party in Sweden who said, we'll give the information to people and we'll trust them. Look after the old. They didn't do a very good job with that, Sweden, but everything else they did. And here we have ridiculously minute regulations. There's no trust of the citizen. It's true that Australians seem perfectly happy to be told what to do. I'm finding it incredible. There's no individualistic spirit. This Liberal Party hasn't got a liberal bone in its body, and I'm talking about the Morrisson Party. Some of the things, we should have a Prime Minister out there every day saying, we're going to have to live with this. The lockdowns aren't going to work. We have to trust people. Here's what information you need. What really irks me is that these politicians haven't taken any pay cut. They're the ones who decide that they can ruin people's lives. They don't take any hit at all. Zero.
James, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
James Allan there. You can read him in The Spectator Australia. Lots more to come after this break.